Hey folks, welcome back to the Fortinet Secure SD-WAN series. In this episode, we're going to actually start to talk about the SD-WAN and some of the nuts and bolts of, I should say like some of the building blocks of the actual technology itself, right? So up until this point, we really haven't done anything regarding, I say quote unquote, SD-WAN. We've got the underlay transport, some IPsec tunnels, and some BGP peerings. So what we're going to do is for Firewall 2, we're going to come to Network, and we're going to go to the SD-WAN tab. And for the record, I am running 7.2.11 on all these boxes. At the time of recording this video, this is the latest version of the 7.2 train. 7.4 and 7.6 are out. They are fairly new and potentially buggy, and this video is really not about features and functionality. It's more about the functionality. So I'm using 7.2.11, so depending on when you watch this, it might look a little different than some of the newer versions. Anyway, when you come over to SD-WAN, Fortinet gives you, out of the box, they give you this virtual WAN link SD-WAN zone. So you can see I'm under SD-WAN zones. There's a tab for SD-WAN rules, which you can see there's nothing here. And then there's performance SLAs, which they give you some performance SLAs out of the box. We're actually going to delete all these and we're going to create our own, most likely next video. So the first thing we need to do is if we go back to like our network interfaces, right? We have all these interfaces that we have that we configured, right? So what we have to do is we have to assign these interfaces to SD-WAN zones, okay? And once they're in SD-WAN zones, you can enforce policies, you can enforce metrics, you can kind of do that route steering that we're trying to accomplish with SD-WAN. So if we hop back down to SD-WAN and we go to zones, I don't use the default. I like to just create a new one. So I'm going to create a new zone, okay? And I'm going to call it SD-WAN Internet, okay? And for the Internet, I'm going to just I'm going to put the Internet port to, that's the raw interface, direct Internet access. I'm going to put that in the zone. So I'm not going to define anything special. I'm going to stick that in there and I'm going to say okay. All right. Now, if I edit him and I go to members, I'll say port 2. Okay. So now we have this SD-WAN internet zone that contains the internet port 2. Now we do have to set the gateway. So I probably should have just did that a second ago, but the gateway was, this is what, site 2, it's 100.11254, right? And I'll leave the cost at 0, that's fine, and we'll say okay. All right, so that's there. You can see it's sending and receiving traffic, so it's happy. So we've essentially taken that interface and we've put it into a zone called SD-WAN Internet, okay? Now we're going to create another zone. This one's going to be called SD-WAN VPN, okay? I see what happened. So this goes back to that bogus rule. So let me back out. I'm actually glad that happened. So if you watched a couple videos ago when we set up the IPsec tunnel, in order for it to go green and verify connectivity, we created this bogus policy. Okay, we created that bogus policy just for the sake of having the interfaces in it so that they would come up and go green. At this point, I'm going to delete this policy. Now that's going to take the VPN down and all that stuff. I get it. It's going to break the BGP peerings, but that's fine. Let's just take it out for the moment. Let's come back to SD-WAN. Let's create a zone. SD-WAN VPN. And now, with any luck, we should see the tunnels available, okay? So since they were in the policy, they weren't available to attach to this zone. So I had to free them up by deleting the policy. So now I'm going to take both of those and I'm going to assign them to the zone. We'll okay that. And then I'm going to create another one. It's just wonky how it doesn't allow you to it's just so weird. So anyway, I created them, and then when you highlight them yellow, it sticks them over in the zone that you want, right? So I went ahead and did that, but you see what it did there? It's really strange. I wish you can just like delete this, but it's this out of the box thing. So at this point, and you can see the tunnels came back up, which is awesome, right? Like the tunnels have to be referenced somewhere in the config for them to come up. I can't stress that enough. And for demonstration purposes, a few videos ago, we did that bogus policy because we weren't ready to really talk about the SD-WAN yet. I needed to create the tunnels first so that I can attach them to a zone. So there's this order of operations that has to happen. So I know it's confusing. I know it's kind of maybe a little misleading, if you will, but I don't know of any other way to really demo it unless you have a working config and you just paste it in the command line. But if you're building it from scratch with the GUI, you're kind of forced to do this weird order of operations. So what we're going to do is we can stage this now too, and then that way for the next video when we start to do like the rules and performance SLAs, we'll be already set up. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna leave the internet at a cost of 0. So that preserves our direct internet access from a branch perspective. So anybody that needs to get to the internet is going to go out locally. There's no point in trying to go out through the data center. That's going to be a backup route. So the direct internet access is going to have a cost of 0 because the lower the cost, the better the more favorable the route. So we're going to leave that at 0. As far as the MPLS, or excuse me, the tunnels go, we have some choices here, okay? So we can adjust these costs to have one favored versus the other one. So in my other series, I made the argument that MPLS has some kind of a guarantee on it. It's got quality of service. So maybe you want to favor the MPLS to, use as a transit to get to the data center. So if we make this cost, let's say 10, all right? And we make the internet tunnel 11, all right? They're both higher than the internet cost, obviously, because that's 0. And now, if anything, MPLS is going to be favored over the internet as far as this zone is concerned. So we'll leave it at that for the moment. Now, where that's going to come into play is under the SD-WAN rules, okay? Right now, we just have the deny, we just have the out of the box rule. So we're going to create a new rule, all right? And we're going to say, we'll basically target the data center. So in our case, the data center was 10.0.0.0, all right? So we can just say, let's just say we make the rule 10.0.0.0, /16 network, right? So in other words, the data center. So we'll enable this rule. So for source, we're just going to say all, okay, for the moment. For destination, I guess we can build that same network, right? So let's just say for destination, we'll create one, and we'll say that it's the 10.0.0.0/16 network, which is that, okay? So let's build that address, and let's stick him in the destination, okay? And then here's where we come back to our options. So I was building the zone and the interfaces in the zones with a cost, okay? So one way to kind of accomplish this is, you can first of all, you can set it to manual. So in other words, always send traffic to this destination over this link, right? That's a way to do it. You can do best quality. So when we get to that performance SLA tab, we can do measurements based on performance, and we can steer the traffic based on that performance. Or you can do cost, which is kind of favoring one link over another unless there's a problem, and then it'll switch or move the traffic. So let's do cost. I'm a fan of lowest cost, and maybe you'll see why when we do the failover testing and stuff. So we'll say lowest cost. Now for interface preference, this is where we're going to basically say, so we're under the, this is to go back to the data center, right? So the only two transits that will get us there are the tunnels. So we're going to add the tunnels to the interface preference, okay? And then as far as the target goes, we have to define some kind of a target that's going to measure the performance of these two links, okay? So we haven't quite done that yet. What I was thinking was on this firewall, oh yeah, we do have it built. That's right, okay. So the lab 4 has this loopback address, okay? So if we go back to the topology, if we go back to the topology, the DC was 10.0.0.0/16, which allows us to do 10, basically whatever we want, 10.0, anything. So let's just choose the 10.0.254, which is what I have here. So it's kind of like one of the higher values of the range. So we're going to take this IP because we need to advertise that into BGP. So we got the loopback, it's already defined, and it has ping enabled on the head end firewall. But we need to make sure that that's reachable from our spokes. So if we come over to BGP and we go down to networks, we can advertise that /32 as a network, okay? So we apply that, it should save. And let's just finish this config, and then we'll assume for the moment that that advertisement works. But let's put that address in here as the target, and then we'll verify two things. One is it learned it, and two, it's able to ping it, and it's using it as a proper target. And in all honesty, let's just do manual for now because I need to come over to performance SLAs. And I need to really define that. So what we should do is we should say, loopback, and we'll say, do we still have it on the clipboard? Yes, we do. So in other words, we're going to ping the loopback of 10.0.254.254. We're going to essentially specify that we want that ping to use the two tunnels, And now for our SLA targets, this is where we can set some of the thresholds, okay? So maybe we want the latency to be, 150 milliseconds. Maybe the jitter should be no more than 50. And let's say we're willing to tolerate, 2% packet loss. Maybe you don't want to tolerate any packet loss. You could leave it at 0. But for demonstration purposes, I'll put it at 2 for now, and we can tweak that if we see fit. So I'm going to say okay to that. Now, in all honesty, this should, if I refresh this page, it should, if this goes green, that should kind of tell us that the advertisement and the routing's working. If it doesn't, then obviously, we got to troubleshoot some stuff. So it has not come up, so that might be, something we're going to have to kind of troubleshoot here. Yeah, it's not coming up. So let's go back to the rules, and let's tweak that rule one more time just to favor the lowest cost. And now we should be able to reference that SLA target for loopback 1. So our building blocks are in place, right? So we did the zones, right? So we have the internet port in its own zone, which has the lowest cost, which preserves our direct internet access. we have the internet tunnels, okay, are, or the VPN tunnels are configured INET and MPLS. We're favoring MPLS because it has a lower cost than the internet tunnel. For the rules, we're basically saying that anything trying to get to the 10 dot network across these two tunnels, right, it's going to measure the performance of loopback 1 reachability, which is defined in the SLA. So we have our building blocks here for SD-WAN. I will basically reproduce this on Firewall 1, and we'll have to do a little bit of troubleshooting on the loopback reachability. So let's just check the routing table, get router info BGP summary. So we're learning two prefixes. So we're definitely learning it, and it's favoring the 0 dot, which is the internet. So it's there. Get router info routing table all. So it's there. It's been there for 3 minutes and 53 seconds. Execute ping 10.0.254.254. Right. So it is not pinging. So this is going to come down to a policy. All right. So let's build the policy, and then I'll try to summarize or give an explanation of all this stuff, because I know we're jumping around a bit, and I want to make sure that it's solidified in everybody's head. So let's come to policies and objects and go to the firewall policy. And we're going to build two rules, okay? So we're going to keep this super simple. So we're going to say SD-WAN out. So essentially, at the end of the day, we're going to have a switch and some PCs and some workers and all that good stuff sitting behind the firewall. So anything that comes in on the LAN port, okay? So we're going to say anything that comes over on the LAN port and goes out the SD-WAN VPN, okay, which is our tunnels. Source is going to be, we'll just say all. In this case, you'd probably want to put like your subnets of your branch location, or you can get as granular as you want. I'm just going to say all because it's a lab. I'm going to say destination is, I'll just say all. We could probably use this, but I'm just going to say all. Because, remember, we're going to have 80 VPN at some point going to other branch sites, so you got to be aware of some of that. Service, we'll say all. We're not going to do NAT. We'll log everything. We'll make sure it's enabled. So that's essentially just like almost like a catch-all policy that says anything coming from the LAN going to the VPN, just allow it. We're going to clone the reverse of that, and we're going to call it SD-WAN in. And we're just going to get rid of the comment and enable it. Okay, so this builds the policy for the branch side. Let me hop to the head-end firewall. Okay, we still have that bogus policy. Okay, so this might be part of our problem too, right? So at this point, let's kind of redo this one as well. Let's say SD-WAN in. So anything coming in on the two tunnel interfaces, anything going out the LAN, which we haven't configured him yet, but that's fine. Actually, and we're going to say outbound to the loopback as well. So this is why that ping is not going to work, because we're not allowing that traffic through the firewall. So anything coming from the SD-WAN tunnels going to the LAN or the loopback, we're going to allow it. So let's okay that. Now we'll clone the reverse of him, and we'll say SD-WAN out. And we'll get rid of the comment, and we'll enable that. So it looks like the SD-WAN in already took some hits, which is good. That's a positive sign. So let's come back to our Firewall 2 and go to Network SD-WAN. Let's go to those performance SLAs and check it out. So this is what we needed to do a few minutes ago. So if you give this another minute, this packet loss should come down to 0. So if we keep refreshing this page, it's down to 14, 8, and hopefully next click it'll be at 0. Okay, so this is what we want to see. So let's just summarize, and we'll stop here, and then I think by next video we'll actually be able to like do some failover testing and stuff. So we're in a really good spot. So what we did was we moved the interfaces around so that they were part of the zones, right? So there's different layers of config as far as the FortiGate firewalls go. All right, so SD-WAN kind of sits on top of everything else. Okay, so even though you have the concept of SD-WAN rules here, you still have policy here. Okay, and for people that are just learning the SD-WAN, Fortinet SD-WAN technology, it's that could be a challenge learning that piece. The way I like to think about it is if you're in SD-WAN section, all this is doing is steering traffic over one link versus the other. So this is where we're playing traffic cop as far as send traffic this way or that way. The policies, I like to think of them as our just the old school plain Jane, you're allowing this traffic or you're denying this traffic. So I like to think of the firewall policies as the allow and deny, and I like to think of the SD-WAN rules as the traffic steering. That's the way I like to think about it. But you have to realize that the SD-WAN kind of sits above everything. It's going to steer the traffic first, and then it'll apply policy second, okay? So you kind of, you still need firewall policies even though, you've got SD-WAN. Like, you still need both, all right? So one thing if I go back to SD-WAN, so now that the performance SLAs are up and they're green, okay, so we get our statistics here. So right now, if I click on packet loss, it gives you a little graph for, the last 20 minutes or so. And it'll tell you all of the SLAs and their current measurements and thresholds. You can add a bunch of these, right? We're probably going to add another one for like 8888 and define that loopback somewhere in our environment, so that way we can gauge on internet performance as well. So you can have a whole bunch of SLAs. It doesn't matter. It depends on how robust you want to make your SD-WAN environment. In this case, we're going to keep things simple for the sake of the lab and just demonstrate how to kind of have traffic steered automatically based on performance. That's kind of what we're after. But we can see that everything's in the green, everything's good. If we come back to the SD-WAN rules, and let's just hone in on this rule one more time. So we had said anything that's reaching or destined for the 10.0.0.0/16, which is the data center, we're basing it on lowest cost, and we're measuring the performance of our two tunnels based on the pings that are just constantly pinging the loopback in the data center, okay? It's very much like an IPSLA on a Cisco router, same exact thing. Now, what it shows you here is there's a check mark next to the MPLS tunnel. Now, why is the check mark next to the MPLS tunnel? It's there because that's where any traffic destined to this prefix is going to favor the MPLS tunnel as we are currently sitting right now. And that goes back to the cost. Okay, the MPLS tunnel has a lower cost than the internet, so it's being favored. Just for fun, if I change this to 12 and I hit OK, and then I come back to the rules, look at that. It switched it immediately to the internet tunnel. Okay, so that's a manual demonstration of how to move traffic from one to the other without pulling members out of the zones or messing with the rules and all that kind of stuff. Now we're going to get this to dynamically switch in the next video. We're going to introduce packet loss and delay, and we're going to watch this stuff happen live without intervening with what I just did. Okay, so I just wanted to kind of demonstrate that, and again, just kind of try to drill in on the concept that there's policies and then there's the SD-WAN aspect of the config. And while you need both, if you just remember that the SD-WAN is steering the traffic one way versus the other, and the policies are enforcing whether traffic's allowed or denied, you'll be fine. So I think we're at a good spot to stop. We're gonna pause here, and we might have like one more video where we'll wrap the series up and we'll show live demonstration of failures and degraded circuits and that kind of thing. So thank you very much, and I will see you on that next video.